voice of Sebastian Groth, the ambassador of Germany to Kenya. And of course, interesting things. This is your second time in Kenya.
Yes.
You said that in the early 2000s you came to Kenya. What has really changed in terms of how we operate or how we mannerisms? Kenyan mannerisms, yes.
Those little things you can only notice when you're a foreigner.
Yeah, no, I think it changed a lot. And I would say the development was in a good direction. My first impression was that infrastructure improved significantly. For example, 20 years ago, when you drove, let's say, to Mount Kenya, it took 5-6 hours, and now you're there in 3 hours.
Right.
You have the train to Mombasa now.
Yeah.
You have a number of new facilities like hotels, like restaurants, that for me, there's not a big difference between this infrastructure in a European capital and what we find in Nairobi. The quality of restaurants, of entertainment is excellent. I would also say one thing, and we just talked about it, is that you see this Kenya bracelets now more and more. And I had the feeling 20 years ago there was a different sense of identity. It was more your community or your family or the place where you were born. But now this sort of positive patriotism, I think, is really stronger than I felt it 20 years ago. The good thing is people are as friendly, as nice as they have been 20 years ago.
Nice.
Everywhere you go, you meet very nice and friendly people, open-minded people. So it's very interesting to be back, and I'm very happy to be back also.
Yeah, now there's the conversation about climate change. And of course, COP28 is one of the conventions that happens. And we see so many African countries being part of the conversation. But how best can we place ourselves as Africa to make sure that we benefit either directly or indirectly from the great global conversation?
Well, I think, first of all, we still have to congratulate Kenya and President Ruto for this initiative to organize the African Climate Summit here in Nairobi. That was a first. And from the very beginning, Germany supported this initiative via GIZ and a little bit of seed money for the organizational committee that set up the structure.
Sorry, just for our listeners who are not familiar with what GIZ is, could you just...
It's the arm of the German arm of technical cooperation. So they get German taxpayers' money basically to implement projects. And one of these projects was to support the organizing committee of the African Climate Summit to set it up properly. And no, I think, African voice and African agency in this global challenge is extremely important. Africa is emitting 3 to 4% of all CO2 emissions, so basically nothing. But we all know that the effects of climate change are devastating here on this continent. If you look to the droughts, if you look to the flooding, if you look to all the weather extremes that we feel, especially in this area of the Horn of Africa, with Somalia, Ethiopia, Kenya, all the pastoralists are heavily affected. I just come from Turkana. I was there for 2 days, and there you really feel that from one generation to the next generation, life is changing because of climate change. So I think it's very important that President Ruto took this initiative and brought the Africans together in order to make their voice also being heard more properly and more loudly in the global conversation about climate change.
And it's so important to push those voices, of course, because like you said, very little emissions, but bearing the brunt of climate change. But also, what is Germany doing itself to make sure that we're not past the level where we can go back, right? They say 1.5 degrees more, and there is, no going back as far as climate change is concerned.
So first of all, it's about our own commitments. We want to go climate neutral by 2045. We want to expand the renewables energy sector to go to 80% by 2030. We want to phase out coal by 2038. These are very, very ambitious goals because we are the fourth biggest economy in the world, and we rely heavily on energy for our production that we still have in Germany, and which is also a difference to some of the other big economies. But we are on a good way. So last year we had for the first time more than 50% of renewables in our energy basket. It very much depends on the wind blowing because we have a lot of wind installations. We also have some solar, but We unfortunately
the weather doesn't
exactly don't have as
really
much sun
facilitate.
as we have in Kenya. No, but I think that's the first point. And the second point then is that we try also to influence the European discussion. Europe is between 10 to 12% of global emissions, so that's already a player. We have a so-called Green Deal in Europe, so we also want to phase out coal. We want to bolster the renewables sector, and we want to reduce our emissions significantly as the Europeans, and we are 27 member states. And the third is the international outreach, and there Kenya comes into play, but also other partners. So we have a number of international partnerships with big emitters like Vietnam, like Indonesia, like South Africa, but also with emerging economies like Kenya. And we are trying to identify ways and means to support these countries in their individual energy transition. And the good thing about a country like Kenya is you don't have to repeat the mistakes that we did. You can leapfrog somehow. Exactly. So we see this in other sectors as well. If you look to mobile phone penetration and the use like M-Pesa, you are now ahead of us basically. And I think this is a chance for you to build up a sustainable energy system and at the same time go towards economic growth and prosperity and green industrialization. And that's by the way the idea also of the Climate Club that was formally founded, established at COP28, and where Kenya is also taking part. It was an initiative by Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Now 36 countries are members, industrialized, emerging and developing countries. And the aim is to go for decarbonized industrialization.